So we open this episode with the Chancellor being a bit of a downer. Apparently, the scientists are very excited about all the things we can build now that we've researched alien technology, and the Chancellor just finds the whole thing depressing, apparently, because she's complaining that the researchers can't grasp the distinction between science and technology. That is, she seems to be worried that we will use it for the wrong purposes, pointing out that the aliens are basically using all these technological powers they have, okay, for conquest, war, and death. I fear that if we attempt to emulate the aliens' tools, we may become a little different from them. Well, then that is why we are establishing a utopic democratic superstate to make sure that whatever we do, it doesn't fall with it. Well, we increase the odds it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. I understand that feeling a little bit like a military industrial complex or a defensive capability in the hands of the wrong person quickly becomes an offensive capability and a recipe for disaster. But at the same time, we're kind of being invaded, and I'd like something that can destroy, the tripod things that were landing in Libya a moment ago. Better technology might allow us to defend ourselves from them and service our grand plan of proving to the aliens that we are their equal. If we can't emulate their technology, our plan is basically dead in the water. So as far as I'm concerned, the Chancellor should smile more and push ahead with research, because that is the only option we have available to us unless we want to go join the Protectorate. Alright team, let's get started. Alright, so we've just unlocked Greater Malaysia. Now, this I think fills a very important role. It gives a bunch of claims to Malaysia. Importantly, one of those claims is on Sri Lanka. India can eventually get a claim on Sri Lanka. So, if Malaysia integrates Sri Lanka, and then Indonesia, which has a claim on Malaysia, but not on Sri Lanka, takes territory from Malaysia, it will force Malaysia's capital to Sri Lanka. But Malaysia has a claim on the capital of Indonesia. So I think, I'm not sure, but I think we can use this chain of events to help tie up our Asian conglomerates. That said, for the moment, what I'm doing is trying to make the most of these countries while they're separate. Separate countries are produce more investment points per economy than combined nations, but they're less CP efficient. So they're good at producing things like mission control. So Indonesia, producing mission control. New Zealand, producing mission control. People's Republic of China, mission control. They're not going to be very good at this in terms of efficiency once they're split up, but right now, this is the time for it. I'm also going to probably integrate Myanmar into the People's Republic of China, I guess it's now the Pan-Asian Combine, and then we've got to work on Mongolia, and then a big prize would be Korea. Importantly, and I want to do that peacefully, we spam public opinion, crack down, break in, take it over peacefully, and if we can do that, we can get nuclear weapons and a decent army out of the hands of the servants. And absorbing it, if we absorb it peacefully, will actually increase the mil-tech level of the Republic of China. The People's Republic of China, rather, because it's a 3.8 and the Republic of Korea is a 4.8. There's only 3 provinces in the PRC, so in fact, if we only absorb this one, we should get a reasonable amount of bump to the PRC's capability, which is just going to help the overall capability of the big blob as we start to join it together. I'm not expanding African Union or Caliphate right now because I'm just focused on pushing this forward as fast as we can. I haven't picked a new project. Ring Habs is important for unlocking our Tier 3 structures, working on it, high temperature superconductors, magnetic force manipulation. This is us starting to work towards fusion. My first warships, which I'll show you once they launch, are in the works, and Maskirovka is researching. So on the 3rd of February, we'll get even more leeway on our mission control, which will make me feel a little more comfortable about the Tier 3 stations I'm starting to put together. Tier 3s are good. They can fit layered defense arrays. We're going to be able to fit Tier 3 specialized research labs, agriculture complexes, all that good stuff that'll help us optimize our economy within a smaller MC footprint. We may also want some Tech 1 stations just for mining on asteroids or to take more over on Mars, but for the moment, at least, we're positive. But this economy is, it's not great, but we are stockpiling. I don't like the low nobles, and we're going to burn through this once we start mass construction, but this stockpile is okay. The fissile income is weak, but we're not going to go down fission, and without fission, this is not as much of a problem. Now, first check of our grand plan, because I need to free up some CP cap, because I need CP free to go after South Korea, or I guess the unified Korea now, since the servants unified the damn thing, and Japan. So let's unify Indonesia with the Republic of China to produce this thing. So this is Indonesia. Yeah. Now, the capital, if I'm right, is still, yeah, so the capital of this thing is still Jakarta. But it is a flawed democracy of 1.79 billion people, advanced education standards, integrated 2.2k science. So what we basically, oh, geez, spoils. No, 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 we don't want spoils. This gigantic thing probably just needs knowledge, although I guess it's going to get integrated anyway. So really the focus needs to be democratizing India faster. We should use our CP cap also to finally grab the last resistance point in India. It's just going to be too important to us. But this is, so this is Indonesia. It doesn't need any military investment at the moment, and welfare is pretty strong. So all we're going to do is do a little bit of economy and a whole bunch of knowledge. Get this rate up, get this up. Those things will all be useful later. Geez, okay, and we should probably lower dissent as well, but that saved us a whole bunch of CP cap. We will absorb New Zealand once it finishes its MC allowance, but Indonesia's got 49 mission control, not bad. Right now, the focus of producing more, because you should always be producing more. The PRC is going to produce more for us. We're probably not going to get any out of Sri Lanka in time. Probably not. We can try. The investment will carry over. Although maybe it's 22.8 mil, it's probably not going to affect anything too much. So I think we're okay with Sri Lanka doing spaceflight, and Malaysia is producing as much mission control as it can as well. So we are running MC production across the place. Focusing on democratizing the caliphate and Ethiopia. It's just a very, very long journey. But we do have some places doing MC, which makes me a little more comfortable. Mongolia looks deceptively similar to our colour, so we'll need to absorb it so no one gets confused. But with the CP cap free, I think the Republic of Korea is probably next on the agenda. Just consolidating as much of Asia as possible. Absorbing Auckland, or rather all of New Zealand, will also help. I need to get enough CP cap that I can afford this one at 21.8 as well. Might need to do some management and other research and level up some councillors, but I think I can pull this off. Progress. And while we advance humanity, we've completed their demands. We've translated the Hydra statement. Calling it a statement is unfortunately inaccurate. It is in fact a list of demands. 1. Humanity is to cease all military operations against Hydra forces and place all their forces under the command of Hydra-appointed representatives. 2. Humanity is to commit to building no space fleet, weapons of mass destruction, or any other military asset that could present a threat to the Hydra race. Any such weapons in existence must be turned over to the Hydra-appointed representatives, the Patsies. Point 3. Humans will commit to supporting the Hydra race in any and all future endeavours or military conflicts. A standing human force will be raised and trained to serve Hydra handlers in the future. 4. To ensure that point 2 and 3 are carried out, orbital weapons platforms will be placed in low Earth orbit, carrying sufficient firepower to suppress any possible human resistance. These weapon platforms will be placed under the control of Hydra-appointed representatives. We attempted to negotiate in response to these demands. Our messages received no reply. The mood amongst our people is bleak. The more anti-alien members of our factions are saying, in so many words, "We told you so." The alien demands are not merely for surrender, but for complete and total subjugation. And yet, I believe the Protectorate looks at this and goes, "Yeah, cool bro, great deal, let's do that." I don't think even the servants go for this deal, but the Protectorate does. Anyway, all our attempts to reopen negotiations have been met with silence. We are at the diplomatic brick wall, and I fear there is no path forward. Okay, so that really achieved nothing. But we may as well progress anyway. Pick up some small technologies that might be worth it, that we might need later on, so some platform kits and things like that at a low priority. But mostly I'm pushing ring habs because I want to get into that tier 3 infrastructure, and we'll also need Greater India in order to complete this grand Asian conglomeration. Handy to that end is completing a whole bunch of additional skunk works, pushing this bonus up to 121%. So, casual plus 200-ish, to 50% bonuses on engineering research. A bit low on space science though, so I might want to throw some more HAB modules in Mercury doing space science. Okay, so we've put together a little fleet of pretty shitty ships, to be honest. We've got one survivor-type ship and 3 missile boats. The peer review class makes up the majority of this section. The peer review is just copperheads, magazines, lithium, and a 20 forward armor allotment on a very, very basic hull. The hypothesis class escort is just point defense laser turrets and a lithium heatsink and 20 forward armor. But by their powers combined, they're probably capable of taking out a lone alien destroyer if one happens to present itself. We've also unlocked Ring Hab, so all the nifty technology should be coming our way soon, as long as we're able to survive whatever retribution is coming our way. Oh look, there just so happens to be a lone Victor, Victor 6. This looks like a surveillance destroyer in Earth orbit, but the other option is, I believe in May, an assault carrier should be turning up, and I'm considering trying to go after that instead if I can fit one more lot of ships out. So if I look at fleet and ships construction, all fleets, Victor 63, that's a mothership. I don't want the mothership. That can just be what will be. But this, the Graceful Demon class assault carrier. Oh, it's got a point defense particle beam. That's probably not going to work. I've got 6 missile tubes. That's probably not going to work. I can attempt it, but that's probably not going to work. Especially not with a 64 centimeter violet laser battery. And I have 6 missile tubes. So I may have to settle for shooting down Victor 6. And then deal with the assault carrier on the ground. Leave it with me. On Earth... Sorry, in space we've started upgrading our space stations around Earth and Mercury. There aren't many of them, but they've gone to Tier 3. We're using the extra allotment allowed by Muskarovka. And we've almost finished securing Korea. Now, this is a much slower process than the good old days when we could just send Max in and coup things, but I'm doing the good thing that people suggested in the comments, no coups. We're doing the crackdown purge combination to limit the damage to civilian targets and make sure that people barely notice what is happening. First, we win them over. Then we crack down these points, and then finally we go after the executive. It is slower in terms of consolidation, but it's completely reasonable. 46 days until Malaysia confederate with Sri Lanka. I'm lowering dissent there just to make sure there's no revolution. And Indonesia is doing just fine. It's our first state to actually get a permanent advisor. I think it merits it given its immense economy. It's paying a lot for these armies with navies that are deployed elsewhere, but that's because they're going to have to clear up Mongolia soon. Although if we're going to do this peacefully, I probably can send those armies home. Awesome. We also do have a lot of CP cap allowed, so I might have a look at whether or not I can fit this final India point in, because this double point of spoils on India it's driving my money up, obviously, but it's also ruining India, and India is the ultimate holder of everything that we're going to unite, so I'd rather they kind of stopped that, you know? And I don't have to spend welfare offsetting it, so I think I'm going to try and get that off the resistance, even if it costs me a couple of bribes. Alright, no time like the present. Alpha 1, you are clear to engage. We have less combat power, so hopefully they should accept. Let's go center, engage. Both fleets are willing to fight, start battle. Now, we've got basically no DV in the tank, like basically nothing. These are chemical rockets. They burned half their Delta V just getting here. I have no guarantee at all that they'll be able to get anywhere afterwards. They are light, they are cheap, they're meant to do this job and this job only. Hopefully they can get somewhere at the end of the battle, but let's go. It's just going to be missiles versus his PD, with the hypothesis here providing point defense. So everyone's firing their missile tubes. Missiles are away. Lasers incoming. Easy. And the hypothesis, because I didn't maneuver it manually, was in the wrong position, so we lost one ship, but that is okay. So we've salvaged an alien spacecraft. Our military arm has defeated an alien warship. We have a wrecked ship full of dead aliens as our prize. Only our own losses mirror theirs. Despite the death toll, morale is high. Perhaps in the far future, military historians will remember this day as the birth of a naval tradition. And we've recovered a Griffin corpse. Victory for the Academy. Now that'll piss the aliens off. That's fine. If they come and destroy Alpha 1, I honestly don't care. They're welcome to do so, frankly. But it is what it is. We won't be able to take out that assault carrier, although I will produce some monitors with more missile tubes. But for the moment, this is probably the end to our naval ambitions. We don't have the technology to contest them properly, so all we can do is put layered defense arrays on everything and hope that eventually their hate runs down. Well, I'm not sure if it's personal, but the aliens have decided to land inside, well, okay, this says Indonesia, but what was once China and is soon going to be the giant Asian superstate. Unfortunately, our armies are still redeploying in terms of the Chinese armies, which means it's going to take a while before they can get there. 7.3 days. Actually, no, if they go over land, they'll get there in time. So let's just cancel these operations. I think the aliens have screwed up because they are going to get human waved again. Yeah, they'll make it in time. I'm bringing in the Koreans. I'm bringing the armies that were down in Indonesia proper. The Indians are on their way. It should be an interesting party for the whole family. Nice landing site. You always want, you don't want like inner Africa that you can't get to in time, but somewhere like this is fine. Alright, we're going to have 8 armies in place. We have our advisor, we have our station. We're fighting as okay. 4 point... Look, no, we're not fighting as okay. Japan with its 5.4. America with its 5.7. They're fighting okay. We're fighting with trash, but we're boosting our trash as best we can, and we're compensating with sheer numbers. So hopefully when they disembark, they'll be greeted with approximately all of the tanks that have ever been produced. Bring it on, aliens. Alright, so the aliens are disembarking. But... oh, ring cores in orbit. But don't distract us from this moment. We have 10 armies. They have 3 at 50%, and it's not going to be pretty. Who said you need fancy technology? Stuff from the 1990s is fine, bro.
Lending my expertise.
We'll repeat that one more mission. That should boost our technology just a bit further. Zulu 6 destroyed. There's something ironic about taking the academic research faction and destroying your enemy with a horde of low-tech vehicles. I'm going to argue the people from the economics faculty were involved in that particular one. Nice. So I'm now being asked to research the wormhole research, having just completed exotics. Our nation formation is going well. I'm just annoyed that we're not getting all of the research campuses that we were hoping for. These are the Tech 3. Yeah, okay, so we have everything we're meant to in order to unlock them. I need them and I need agriculture complexes, and they just haven't popped yet. So we'll keep waiting for the moment. I think we'll need hybrid systems eventually, so we may as well pick it up now while we're waiting. Because we have such high xenoscience research that I'd like to be doing 1 xenoscience at any given time. Also doing sanctioned investigations and management research just gives us a little bit of a buffer here. Visible combat lasers, nuclear fusion in space, and advanced hydrogen containment, just pushing up the fusion line for the moment. We don't have the infrastructure to go antimatter. I'm probably going to disband what's left of my fleet, since it's kind of crap. We'll build better ships later. And that might buy me enough. I've put some Tech 1 stations on Mercury actually, just to get a little bit of extra mining done. We might end up expanding them to Tech 3s just to push our research into the absolute stratosphere. We've also gone Tech 3 in Earth orbit. That's where all these specialized stations that give interface bonuses are going to go. So I'll look for opportunities to go upgrade Mercury now, but really, until I get the agriculture complexes, there's a risk that I put my water and volatiles negative if I go too far too quickly. I am positive on cash. That's thanks to my nanofactories. I've got the big nano complexes going down, and that's another reason why I'm focusing so much on getting mining income up. There's only so much I can do with this MC allowance, but damn it, I'm going to make it as efficient as possible. Okay, so I thought I'd add a little state of the game update because I'm coming to the game after a brief break, and one of the comments I've seen and can now respond to is an ask to have a look at how the world is progressing, just to orient through all the different updates. And in doing so, I think prepping for this update, I've been forced to look around the world and realize something. This humanity first United States of America has actually been an interesting blessing in disguise of sorts. Yes, it's caused nuclear war and nuclear exchanges between them and what Exodus has done with running Russia. But the European Union, which was at war with Russia, is no longer at war with Russia because Humanity First has taken the executive. Humanity First is beating up the servants or the protectorate wherever they can find them. And as a result, and almost without me noticing, the servants are not in a very good way. They've been chased around the world constantly, and as a result, their space economy is kind of shit. Their research is only recently recovering. Their money situation is only recently recovering. They're only now researching like fusion piles. They haven't done most or any of their story technology. The Protectorate is in slightly better position. They've done Hydra language and Hydra diplomacy, which puts them further ahead of the chain than the servants have. But Humanity First has really done a decent job for me, I guess, of taking the US military and whatever other forces they can get their hands on, some Europeans, for example, going around the world and beating up forces that, perhaps we don't like. They're strong in Africa, they're strong in America, and they've been engaged in warfare that's basically pushed the servants and the protectorate mostly back to South America. That's the primary place that they still remain, plus the servants in Pakistan. We will soon throw them out of Pakistan, preferably before they do anything silly with the 2 or 3 armies, but those armies are going to become Indian armies, probably get disbanded, to be honest. Like, I probably don't need as many forces as they are preparing, but Pakistan will get folded into India relatively shortly, which should do even more damage to the servants. So that's a comment on the state of the world. We're about to absorb Libya into the Caliphate. We're about to finish taking over Vietnam, and then focus on federating it into the Pan-Asian Combine, which will add to the territory that can eventually be absorbed by greater India. South Korea, or rather unified Korea, federated with the Pan-Asian Combine, capable of unifying on the 14th of May, so next month. Japan, not yet federated, but I believe can now federate. It can now federate, so we'll have to use a set national priority. Let's bring Sven off that and encourage him to go to China and federate Japan, moving forward with the annexation of these countries, which will put them in a better position. So we're progressing very, very well. In space, we're up to 102 mission control, plus a little bit more in construction. We do have 2 technologies, so we're in a better place than we otherwise would be, but I am pushing close to the hate cap. One thing I'm actually doing, the reason I'm actually higher than what you'd think, is I've started doing some mine upgrades at the most valuable, most productive, noble, and base metal mines on Mercury and Mars. Just a couple of updates. So in a couple of months, I think like 6-7 months or so, when those buildings finish, we should have a much stronger economy that's capable of sustaining the first layer of shipbuilding, and also all the new nanos that will come online, which will fund our economy. I don't have fusion in space yet, which makes transitioning over to like a hotel economy in orbit or building massively on Mars sort of slow. But my plan is basically this. I've built another science station in Mercury orbit, and I may even try and get away with another one to push this science even further. I'm building a lot of science buildings as we speak. I want to get the technology for ships, and I'm considering doing a fleet rather than ground-based defense of Earth, Mars, and Mercury at this point. I might do ground-based and space-based without a fleet at Mercury, because it's harder for the aliens to get to, and because the power cost of defensive modules is much lower there. For Mars, most of my locations, I'm not going to be able to upgrade them without triggering alien retaliation, and tech level 1 locations can't really defend themselves. So I'm in a situation where I'm going to need ships to defend Mars in order to protect it, against, well, all the bad things that might happen to it. So a level 1 station in Mars orbit with a refueling depot supporting ships that are being constructed around Earth or around Mercury is probably the way to go. I'm considering building a larger, like, shipyard defensive station, however. Mercury is a potential location for that, and you can then transfer the ships out to Earth or Mars appropriately. Again, it's going to be more power efficient, and you can do other things with it around Mercury. I've got a station going up with one Spaceworks, but probably going to maybe 3 or 4 Spaceworks around Mercury is probably a good idea to pump out enough ships quickly enough. Certainly, anything that we build is probably going to be able to get to Earth quickly enough to reinforce if needed, and Earth does have its own shipyards. If you look at my ship construction at the moment, we do have 2 high Earth orbit space docks and a few more in construction. That high Earth orbit one is ultimately on what may become a distraction station, though. So, who knows how long those space docks are for the world. Certainly, we'll get at least one construction wave off before the aliens destroy them once we decide to go loud. But for the moment, we're not going loud, we're just optimizing science output. I think in terms of the world as a whole, like, economic output is not fantastic. I have not put much into the economy because I can't afford countries to grow before they're unified, because that'd push me really quickly over the CPP cap. Like, if I unleashed India's growth, or the Pan Asian Combine's growth, or the Republic of China's, or, well, actually, it's now Indonesia's. If I unleashed Indonesia's growth in a big way, it could drive the CP cap up really, really quickly. Like, these 6 points already cost 33 apiece. The Indian points cost 21 apiece. I'm going to need to annoy humanity first and throw them out of India. It's time. And then the next step, once Asia is really looking like it's consolidated on Earth, is to start consolidating Africa. That means taking back Ethiopia from humanity first, again costing more bribes, and continuing to expand the caliphate. What we want Ethiopia for is all of its claims through the African Union, which we haven't researched yet, but we will, which will let it basically absorb potentially all of Africa, and then we can unify it into the caliphate, creating a caliphate that runs from, well, it won't run to Pakistan because we're going to give Pakistan to India, but certainly one that runs from Afghanistan all the way to, like, the tip of South Africa, all the way to West Africa. Like, it should be a pretty expansive state, and I believe we can get claims on Turkey as well. So that consolidation should, in the medium term, like within the 2030s, around the time we're going loud, give us a unified Africa and a unified, like, East Asia. And if we can put those together, that's a lot of the Earth's population, basically represented in 2 countries fighting on our side. I'm holding on to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has built a whole bunch of funding just to test it out. Kazakhstan is providing, what, 500 money a month, which is kind of impressive. The economy is fine, it's peaceful. I'm going to need to democratize it at some point. I'm just trying to figure out if anything gets claims on it that we can then absorb it into, and thus it's more efficient to grow it and democratize it that way. So, for example, we are democratizing the caliphate. So if the caliphate eventually gets claims on Kazakhstan, and I'll have to search if it does in any of its iterations, that would be a much better way to democratize and grow Kazakhstan than doing it right now. Just because we're building a utopia doesn't mean we have to be impatient about it. Molecular assemblers, magnetic plasma confinement, deuterium tritium fusion. This should tell you that we are going down fusion. The reason this bonus is low at the moment is because all my tier 2 research boosters for energy are upgraded to tier 3, so this is temporarily quite low. Bad timing, but the extra bonus is worth it. I'm pushing these harder than I'm pushing these techs down the bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. In any case, that was hopefully a quick update on the state of the world. I will continue racing ahead, unifying a couple of countries, and if anything interesting happens in space, I'll jump back. But for the moment, Humanity First seems to be doing a lot of the policing and even the assassination work for us, which I'm kind of happy with. I will say, by the way, this preview patch that I've been using with this technology, it has caused a couple of crashes, and occasionally I've had to roll back one autosave, although they have been hot fixing it and improving it. But I will say I like the new additions to the tech tree. I like the ability to mark obsolete. I would like it if this pushed that tech down to the bottom, and if marking as favorite pushed it to the top. That would be, I mean, you can hide them entirely. I guess that works. Pushing them to the bottom as well, maybe. Although, you know what? Actually, no, I retract that. Since I have the hide button, I'm happy with this. In any case, yes, it has occasionally caused me to crash and have to roll back one autosave, but it's become much more stable over the course of the preview, and I like it. the fact they've added the alien hate meter to the front page, the fact that they've added this, it's just these small little user interface tweaks. There's obviously a long way to go, but it shows the game is moving in the right direction, and I'm very happy with that. Let's grab Hydron traps because Hydron traps are great, and by the time I build my fusion-powered ships, I want them. And right now, researching some materials tech 2 is entirely acceptable since we're about to finish molecular assemblers, but let's not rush it. 111, 132, I like this tech distribution. There's a slight CP efficiency by unifying in Libya.
Policy direction complete.
And we will federate in Japan next, I think. Fantastic. We don't need to federate in Pakistan. We can federate that into India directly to save us a little bit of time.
Our associates are now in charge.
And we've purged in Vietnam, so we now have full executive control. We'll lock that down. What we'll do is we'll build as much mission control as we can before it comes time to unify. We have an army in Vietnam that we don't need, so we will definitely disband that. It has no navy. So what we're doing is Jay and our new recruit, who I will name probably after this episode, are working in concert, cracking down and purging. So we take one new CP and we crack one down every turn. That's our constant rate of expansion, unless one of the others gets involved. We've got a couple to set policy, and then if anyone doesn't need to set policy, they're available to push down dissent. Because dissent is obviously a little bit high in some of these countries. The GDP per capita is not quite there yet, so we do occasionally need to bring unrest down because unrest is your enemy. Once they all unify together and we grow GDP per capita and push in welfare, the unrest rate, we should be able to push it to 0. Enough knowledge investment will push cohesion to 5, and an economy that's big enough will mean everyone's living in a democracy, they're moderately cohesive, and they have lots of money with low inequality. They'll be happy even if it's a super nation, right? They may not get along with all their neighbors, but if everyone's got a whole bunch of money and a job and social security and healthcare and educational opportunities and no one's unemployed, people tend to be okay with it, at least in Terra Invicta. It is just a game. So that is the plan from here. I don't think we're going to have to lay low that much longer. Science is picking up, which is very, very good. Our bonuses to research are picking up, which is also very, very good. And when you go loud is ultimately determined by when you can no longer expand in space, plus when you have the technology to make a fight of it. We're pushing for the technology to make a fight of it, plus because I'm on a higher difficulty, I don't have the ability to build as much of a space economy, so moving quickly is important. The aliens are going to keep building up, and there's going to be a point where I can't keep up with that growth. At the moment, I'm exceeding their rate of growth. It's worth it for me to be quiet. But I'm not going to be able to keep up because I'm going to hit an upper cap of how much MCA can build that is so much lower than what it is on normal that, well, I'm going to have to go loud sooner or later just so I can start upgrading all my bases, building new mines, and building some serious infrastructure in order to support myself. Money generation, for example. I want to turn this boost. I want to turn all this boost into geriatrics facilities or hotels in Earth orbit. I can't do that because it's an inefficient use of the 5 mission control I'd need for that station. So the sooner we get to the point where we can fight, probably the better. After all, that's how you prove you're equals. You punch your opponent in the face really, really hard, or at least that's the logic the Academy seems to be moving towards. And I'm sure there are people, I've come back pretty quickly. I've realized there is almost certainly people who watch my resources and go, what on earth is happening? Why is your money fluctuating wildly? Where did all your money go? Why are your volatiles negative? Why do you not care? Here's what's basically happened. Upgrading your xenoscience laboratories actually costs a whole bunch of cash. So building these 3 upgraded xenoscience institutes in Earth orbit, which now give me the maximum scam bonus, plus I've got 2 smaller ones still, that blew most of my money reserve. My money oscillates between massively negative and massively positive depending on whether those stations that have nanofacturing complexes are idle and thus making money, or are building something else on base and as a result aren't making any money. So I run positive when these bases are not building anything, and I run negative when they are building something. So when it comes time to upgrade these mines, I've got to have money saved to account for the fact that these nanofacturing complexes will be instead constructing upgrades to this mine. I'm not worried about the negative water and volatiles because a whole bunch of stations that I have, if you look at Mercury, for example, they don't have their agricultural facilities yet. This is an agriculture complex, and the station is running massively negative. In fact, this station, frankly, is probably going to need 2, but it doesn't have nano, so it's okay. So I'll check in on it after this one's finished in May. But a lot of these are only just switching over to having neutral production now. This one here, for example, minus 85, minus 86. Well, that's going to change once this completes on 12 May, and if it needs another one, I can replace this solar array. Probably only necessary looking at the base design when this switches over to a colony mining complex, but I'll keep an eye on it. So this is essentially the way. Because we're in the massive update cycle, we occasionally go negative on money, and until we get our agriculture facilities up, we're going to be negative on water and volatiles. We can certainly keep up with the need for water and volatiles once ag finishes, but I'm doing the same on Earth, for example. There are ag facilities in here, I am sure. There you are, agricultural complex, manufacturing, which means all this thing probably is going to need. Oh no, a lot of this is power generation. I'll see. This thing might need a second complex eventually. Anyway, all of these are going to go neutral, which is suddenly going to shoot our volatile income positive. Eventually, you don't need volatile upkeep because you update everything to colonies and then they grow their own food and volatiles, and as a result, you're fine. So it's really these metals that I'm focusing on because these are the things that are going to be eaten by my late game structures. My base, my noble, and my fissile, and building the biggest pile of those things possible is a great thing. Like I said before, they're not that great at the moment because a number of mines on the best possible locations are updating, and while they're updating, they produce exactly 0. Alright, so as you can see now, some mines have come online, the resource income is improving, cash is slightly positive, because we've unfortunately finished some more buildings, but that's okay. We can build more income capacity, and I think some still in construction. We've jumped to massively positive on volatile and water as agricultural facilities begin to finish. We've got a whole 3 space works, which are the tier 3 shipyards in Earth orbit, so those can construct ships pretty damn quickly when we need them. I might go turn them off to save some upkeep. We've shot over CP limit because we've taken the final spot in India, so India is now fully under our control, and we will of course bring ourselves back under cap by unifying with the Republic of Korea. There we are, which brings us back down to 525 of 527, and I'm okay going a little bit over in order to facilitate unifications. Fusion Outpost kit is done, and magnetic plasma confinement is done. Fantastic progress. I'll look up, I think I might need anti-magnetic nozzles next, and I also need Z-pinch techniques. I'm going to pick up Z-pinch techniques first. I'm going to keep doing this whole double energy because my energy labs should finish soon, which will massively speed this up, and energy is what I need. I'm researching the larger version of the Caliphate. Some protection. I'm not going to research any weapons at the moment. I don't really need them. But battle stations might be a good investment. Those could come in handy. Everything else we're going to go for more advanced stuff later on. Encrypted research systems, actually. Encrypted research systems also worth having because people keep sabotaging and stealing my tech. +2 to those rolls. That's okay. The reason these things aren't moving very quickly is because of the division of labor. I might give these a little more capacity to move forward. Like, that saves. Oh, no, pushing the globals is more important because these are all great, but none of them are particularly important, and I can always switch them out for stuff that matters. Z-pinch, deuterium, tritium, and ultra capacitors. Once DT fusion finishes, I'm going to switch over to weapons technology, diversify away from doing double energy to doing 1 energy and weapons technology, so the weapons and the power systems all finished about the same time ultimately. So here, for example, you can see a station which is specialized in energy research, because that's ultimately what I'm going to want to push really, really hard, and as a result, suddenly, and there's still more in construction, we're back up to plus 66%, even doing 2 technologies at once, and I will push this number probably closer to 100%. A lot of modules are updating at the moment, so it's really only Xenology that's getting the full scope of its bonus. We can push these numbers higher while also getting even more research centers online. In fact, I may push for even more around Mercury because time is money, or rather, technology is everything, and money is a way to technology. So even though it'll push MC a little bit, maybe even more research around Mercury is pretty good. I've limited myself to 2 stations. That's a pretty limited Mercury presence. I could probably afford to expand the economy with just that little bit more, as long as I don't go hog wild on Mars or elsewhere. I can always ditch the less productive stations on Mars if need be, and then take them back later with the help of Marines once we don't care about the opinions of the Servant or Protectorate anymore. Because once we start shooting at the aliens, well, the Servants aren't going to be happy, one way or the other. And in line with our rules, when I locate a Hydra, I either let it go if I think the hate level is too low, or if I think I can just get away with it, as I currently can, I'll go in for the detain. Obviously, always defending the Councillor to make sure a critical fail doesn't kill them. So that's another Hydra detained, and a very small bonus for my xenology research. 80% from alien activity investigations is not nothing, however, but that's just mostly driven by investigating alien activity rather than taking the Hydra themselves. We'll see if that pumps us up to 5 hatred, but for the moment, I think we're okay. We fixed our last estimate on 6 July 2032. Okay, so we haven't gone to full hatred. We should be okay, and it will decay naturally back to my MC cap. So this is a resource, right? If we're not burning down hate over time, what are we even doing? And I'm not attacking the servants, which is how you usually generate hate, right? Most of your hate would usually come from attacking the protectorate and the servants, which I'm just not doing at the moment. Although I am considering throwing them out of Pakistan. So maybe that will piss them off and I have to consider myself, but for the moment at least we're riding the line and running off that hate slowly. Alright, I stand very, very corrected. We are in fact at 5 hate, and we are about to lose a station. There we are, back to 4 hatred. Okay, so we traded our high Earth orbit station, which was also our secondary shipyard, in exchange for bringing the hate back down to level 4. I still think it was worth capturing that alien counselor. Letting them around to do abductions and enthralls is just a bad idea, especially since they were sniffing around my superstates, and even though I'm researching more and more of these resistance technologies, I'd feel safer if they were, in prison with Rudy. And while our projects and build-up continues, we've now finished wormholes. The Hydras have created an artificial space-time discontinuity, aka a wormhole at their base in the Kuiper Belt. In any other circumstance, this would revolutionize our understanding of physics and open up a new branch of science, or open up new branches of science. In our present situation, it primarily represents a threat. So long as the wormhole is active, the Hydras will be able to continually reinforce their invasion forces. However, the wormhole also represents an opportunity. We could, in theory, take advantage of the Hydra wormhole to contact the Hydra leadership directly. The problem with this plans are obvious and massive, yet it represents our only reasonable chance of achieving a permanent peace, and there is a new energy and commitment among our personnel. Let us get to work. So now we need to research the choke point when it becomes available, but I like to always have xenology going, so let's also research their weakness and their purpose. This means we're going to have what we need to bargain with them once we learn more about how to access them. We're working on terawatt fusion, ultraviolet combat lasers, and magnetic nozzles. Basically, we're advancing our weapons technology and our power generation technology. Terawatt fusion is the big one. This is the 95,000 research big kahuna, and it will be finished in October 2033 at current research rates, which is 16.8k per month, with a plus 72% on energy research. Not that anyone is really helping us, but hey, I don't blame them for giving up given the sheer amount of beakers that we are now producing. And we can now discover a little bit more about why the Hydra are here. We've been able to solicit valuable information from the alien captive thanks to a discovery that Hydra falsehoods carry unique ferrocite signatures. Because it transpires that a Hydra would rather go silent than be caught lying, because as far as we can tell, an unsuccessful desperation is a source of great shame. Side note, we thus know it's lying because it has a chemical telltale, and it won't lie to us because it knows we have a chemical telltale. It's been surprisingly straightforward to establish which matters the alien is relatively willing to discuss with full confidence that it is not deceiving us. In consequence, we have now gleaned significant understanding of its intentions towards Earth. Take me there. Okay, we have completed the determine their purpose objective. Report from the head of our translation team is attached. Despite objections from the more credentialed members of our team, I have allocated William Parker 2 hours per day to communicate with Rudy. We placed no restrictions on what topics could be discussed, apart from the most basic ones concerning military security. The results were surprising. Rudy, though unwilling to discuss anything that he considers a military or state secret, has been quite willing to talk about the history of his species. The Hydras apparently evolved upon an old planet with a single supercontinent upon a vast ocean. An ocean that contained the majority of the world's natural resources, but which also teemed with deadly predators. The Hydras domesticated various amphibious species and used them to scavenge and mine the resources on the seabed. Apparently the Hydras developed close, sometimes even fond relationships with these species. Their civilization was built upon them, and once their galactic science advanced sufficiently, they uplifted many of them to near-human intelligence. but they're still domesticated. They're still controlled by ferrocytes. Unfortunately, this state of affairs did not last. The Hydras had only recently discovered spaceflight when their world was devastated by an interstellar weapon launched at their planet by a third sapient species. 99% of the entire Hydra race died instantly, taking with them much of Hydra history and culture. The only groups to survive were those off-planet in the Hydra's space habs and colonies. The Cataclysm, as it is known, seems to dominate the remains of Hydra culture. The species responsible for the Cataclysm is one we are already aware of, the Hydra slave warriors known as the Salamanders. The first action of the Hydra Defense Consensus was to neutralize and subjugate the Salamanders, and their entire reason for existence is to ensure that nothing like the Cataclysm can happen again. In other words, they got sucker punched, lost 99% of their species, and as a result, the survivors basically think that no one should be allowed free will, or any other species of sufficient means should be allowed free will because we might go mess with them and repeat the experience. Of course, if you're playing humanity first, then it turns out that messing with humanity causes the cataclysm to repeat, and most of the Hydra species is once again wiped out. So, clap, 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 clap. Let's continue researching their weakness. I diverted because I wanted fusion reactor farms, which will let me start using all the slots that we have in our level 3 settlements, the couple that are on Mars, using those efficiently and maybe upgrading those around Earth as well. Fusion reactors are just more space efficient than solar arrays around Earth, which means maybe we can get something like a geriatric station set up, although for the moment we're fine on money. And of course, if you're going to negotiate with someone, you need leverage, and so we complete the Their Weakness project. This has been one of our more uncomfortable projects, trying to figure out some way to force the Hydras to the negotiating table, and it's led us down some dark paths. In the end, the solution came, once again, from our expatriates. Some of the more anti-alien members that left our faction have migrated to a faction known as Humanity First, led by a figure known as Colonel Castillo. Humanity First are not satisfied merely with defeating the Hydra, they want to kill them, all of them, and have conceived of biological weapons with which they hope to wipe out the Hydra race entirely. Humanity believes that the Hydra ferrocytes can be used as a point of vulnerability, allowing direct access into the Hydra brain and immune system. Our researchers have looked at the HF data and, though they lack sufficient expertise to say for sure, they believe that HF's designs have the potential to work. Obviously, we do not wish for this plan to proceed, even apart from the ethical concerns. The deployment of this kind of bioweapon would represent a further escalation in the human-Hydra war that would in all probability end with the extinction of our species, their species, or both. The threat of such an attack, however, might be the leverage we have lacked and needed. This kind of brinksmanship is an extremely dangerous game, but we are at this point out of options. We will set our researchers to work developing a proof-of-concept bioweapon. I hope that we are not making a terrible mistake. In other words, they want exactly the same thing Humanity First does in terms of the weapons technology. The difference is instead of deploying it the first chance they get, they want to use it as leverage. Now, in order to make our grand plan work, there's going to be a series of territorial musical chairs that is about to happen, and I just want you to understand that there is a purpose to it all, and yes, there will be some very confused members of the public, but some academics and lawyers have gotten together and figured out that this works. So firstly, Indonesia is going to hand over the territory that it owes, technically speaking, to the Caliphate, which we do before they finish House of Islam. What do I want to get? I don't really have anything urgent. Let's remove obsolete. Arrival markets, why not? It's quick and cheap, and we'll get the screen out of my way. What this does is hands Kuala Lumpur over to the Caliphate. This is important because in a moment,
Policy direction complete.
we'll federate Malaysia with Indonesia. This will eventually, because Malaysia has a claim on the capital of Indonesia, Jakarta, allow for Malaysia to unify and absorb Indonesia, which includes most of China. But if it absorbs back Kuala Lumpur, it will move the capital of Malaysia from Sri Lanka back to Kuala Lumpur. We can't have that, so the Caliphate is basically the one that's going to have to hold the territory. But we don't want the Caliphate holding all this territory over here. We want it to eventually be part of our big Asian blob. So next turn, what's going to happen is the Caliphate is going to hand Kuala Lumpur over to the People's Republic of China, which has a claim on it, and then it's going to hand back the rest of this territory back over to Indonesia, making sure that Pan-Asia remains basically Pan-Asia. With Malaysia and Indonesia now federated, on the 28th of November 2033, what happens is Malaysia can then absorb Indonesia. At that point, India can federate with Malaysia because India has a claim on Sri Lanka, the capital of Malaysia. Malaysia will also be all of this, okay? And then eventually Indonesia can unify with Malaysia, thus absorbing everything else. We've got a bit more time to absorb everything that the People's Republic has a claim on, and that's primarily Thailand, Laos remains, and then we can basically take our time with the things India has a claim on, because once the PRC has absorbed Thailand and Laos, we can absorb the PRC again into India, because the capital of the PRC is claimed by India. It all makes sense. We could technically unify the PRC now, so I might hurry up with trying to get Thailand and Laos absorbed, basically at all speeds and at all costs, because the sooner we can unify two of these nations, we're going to free up an awful lot of CP cap, and I'm kind of in the mood to do so. You'll notice we're temporarily over. That's because the caliphate has temporarily grown. It's okay. It's going to give all that territory away next turn, and everything is going to be fine. So I've taken on the rule that you can only invade countries with terrible democracy ratings. So we did invade Somalia, which has a totalitarian 0.0 to absorb it into the caliphate. We will then move into South Sudan, another totalitarian state, to absorb it into Ethiopia as we start building the African Union. Funnily enough, in 45 days, Israel and the Caliphate will federate, and I think that will be a good place to end the episode. So let me get to that. Now, you will get to decide what is the more remarkable thing this episode. Whether I just finished Terawatt fusion reactors, whether we'd research this technology here, which I've never researched before as the Academy, so let's have a look at it. Blah, 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 blah. So they've discovered the new simplest method for neutralizing the alien threat would appear to be closing or destroying the wormhole on our end. In practice, however, this approach will be far from straightforward. The wormhole is a type of discontinuity that has been dubbed an Ellis strain hole. From what we can gather, the structure is stable but not invulnerable. Destroying its support machinery at either end should cause the tunnel to collapse in on itself, destroying the wormhole. However, this is our last resort, unlike the Resistance. We intend to send a negotiating team through instead, basically saying, hey man, you want to not be blown up by us? We've learned all we can about the Hydras. We've studied their culture, language, and history, reverse engineered their technology. We have not developed our own space fleet. I built a couple of shitboxes with Copperhead missiles, but I'm researching them now. We've analysed their physiology and capabilities. We have learned to defend ourselves against their ferrocites and developed plans for turning their weapons against them. Now it is time to put everything together by proving that we have the ability to genuinely threaten their species, yet also demonstrating a willingness for a peaceful solution. We hope to bring them to the negotiating table and end this war for good. The risks are great, yet the rewards, should we succeed, are greater. The first step will be Rudy. If we can persuade him to cooperate with our envoys, it will be a priceless diplomatic advantage. If we cannot persuade him, I see no hope of convincing the Hydra leadership. Complete a permanent peace project when it becomes available. Awesome. We're also going to research heavy fusion reactor farms, because those are badass for when we start upgrading. We're about to finish civilian quantum computing, but also let's let these national policies finish. Now, firstly, we're going to unify Vietnam into the People's Republic of China, save ourselves some CP, get us closer to where we're going to be. China's deployed. Okay, that's because Vietnam had some investment in the army, so China now has a new army. And we're going to federate the caliphate with Israel. And that's where I want to end this episode. We're expanding in Africa. Asia is marching towards its obvious conclusion. We should be looking to unify all of Asia into a mega-state next episode. I've also federated Kazakhstan into the Super Caliphate, so we can unify that in eventually, and add all that sweet funding income into the wider Caliphate, which is now an anocracy. Needs to have its unrest brought down, but we're working our way towards democracy in the Caliphate. Important because otherwise the people of Israel will be pretty annoyed if they're annexed into a caliphate that is a dictatorship. In any case, it is all advancing for the Academy and our research. I hope you are enjoying, and I will see you next time.